Hello there, this is James the Scorpion, RT78, with a brief clarification for everyone who responds to the concept of privilege as it is explained and defined by feminists and social justice activists here on the internet and elsewhere by insisting that, well, if that's the case, then everyone is privileged, aren't they? As if the fact that if you're bad at maths, your straight white cis male privilege won't get you into Harvard unless you have a legacy and or your parents are rich enough to make a multi-million-dollar donation to that university means that you're oppressed as well, because while yes, the definition of privilege from an individual perspective, which most feminists and social justice activists use online, i.e. assuming that it's not a problem full stop, merely because it's not a problem for us personally, is predicated on the fact that as a result of our unique circumstances and experiences, everyone is theoretically privileged in one way or another in at least one circumstance, with, for example, a white bisexual woman being privileged in the overwhelming majority of circumstances because she is white, while on the other hand, in certain very specific circumstances, a black lesbian woman is privileged because she is a lesbian, although a wealthy, straight, white, cisgendered and able-bodied man is technically underprivileged in that one respect compared to a fully literate but impoverished and physically disabled bisexual trans woman of colour if the straight white cis man in question is dyslexic. That disadvantage would only be apparent if they were both in the same saw trap and the one who could read the instructions first would survive. Indeed, in virtually every other circumstance that exists, the overwhelming majority of other people on the planet would have the advantage over the hypothetical impoverished and physically disabled bisexual trans woman of colour that I just mentioned, and insisting that this is not an issue that anyone should ever have to worry about because 1% of the human population would be worse off than her in 0.1% of all possible circumstances, when we ourselves as straight white cis men have the advantage over 90% of the human population in more than 90% of circumstances, is self-serving, to put it mildly, because living as we do in a society that was created by wealthy straight white and cisgendered men for the benefit of wealthy straight white and cisgendered men, the undeniable reality is that we are literally the standard, the norm and the ideal by which everyone else is judged. Which brings us on to the demographic definition of privilege, for lack of a better term, as explained in the video links down as the underbar, and that, to the best of my knowledge, is what is taught to sociology students and so forth, because if you are born into a society that privileges you no matter how slightly over anyone else who is otherwise in exactly the same circumstances, merely because you share characteristics with the people who control the given society and thus use their own perspectives, experiences, needs and desires as the basis of all laws, social customs and taboos, economic policies, town planning and what have you, then claiming that physically attractive women are equally privileged, if not more so, because we give them attention and gifts and do them favours in the hopes that they will let us fuck them, is, to be quite frank, asinine. Because in case you haven't noticed, we as men still have all of the power in that situation, deciding who we want to objectify and giving them gifts, attention and what have you for our own benefit, certainly not for theirs. Unless and until the women in question are declared to be the most attractive by other women and then fought over by men because allowing ourselves to be their fuck toys, trophy husbands or what have you will give us security and prestige, then we are the ones with privilege. And similarly, the fact that white people have essentially chosen to stop oppressing people of colour so blatantly and overtly because being called racist hurts our delicate feelings, while it's undeniably true that we as white people can lose our jobs and suffer other real-world consequences for being blatantly and overtly racist online or in real life, who precisely is firing us? Who actually has the power in that situation? And as such, who is still debating over whether this quote-unquote privilege that people of colour enjoy is deserved, or if it violates our invaluable white free speech? As the internet's favourite Nazi Barbie and I can't possibly be bigoted because I'm gay and Jewish champions of free speech recently discovered to their cost after devoting their lives to ending the hideous oppression that white people are forced to endure by being constantly asked to stop being the problem, privileged people giveth and privileged people taketh away. This in turn brings us on to the ultimate contemporary example of the fact that to be privileged by the second definition is to have an advantage, no matter how slight, over anyone else in exactly the same circumstances, simply because you were born white, straight, cisgendered, or what have you. Because as the image currently on your screen explains, while Obama had to exceed every and all expectations, whitewash himself, and walk on eggshells for decades, knowing that the slightest slip would lead to him being dismissed as just another inferior Negro who only got where he did as a result of affirmative action and reverse racism, the most openly and proudly ignorant, incompetent, and unqualified presidential candidate in history was elected last year, in large part because of the backlash against the fact that Obama only won because black people voted for him. Well, the statistics prove conclusively that Trump only won because white people voted for him, in spite of the fact that the overwhelming majority of black people voted against him. But that's different though. How so? Because white men are supposed to be in charge.